Prepare the way of the Lord. Make straight his paths. My name is Frank Mulvaney. I'm a Redemptorist religious and priest. He is stationed here at the Visitation of the Blessed Virgin Mary in Philadelphia. I stand amidst these great representations, these icons of Mary that tell the story. They tell the story of how God worked through her to reveal his own saving power. How she revealed herself numerous times to San Juan Diego, commanding him to build a church that God's Spirit might dwell among the people in an area that we now understand as Mexico. The way that God's Spirit dwelled indeed in her very body, in her womb. Mary, our mother of perpetual help, who was always there ready to help us the way that she helped those sailors, those Christian sailors, as they were being threatened by a storm, being capsized, being at war with their enemies. So these great representations of Mary help us to prepare. And so as we celebrate the second Sunday of Advent, we hear the call of John. Prepare the way of the Lord. Make straight his paths. Don't put obstacles in the way of God's Spirit working in and through us. You know, the new Archbishop here in Philadelphia, Nelson Perez, came up with a great teaching and understanding as he took office, as he was incarnated here and was given the keys of the kingdom to the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. He said, never doubt the power of God's Spirit working in, through, and despite you. And that's a great understanding of the power of the Spirit. We want to prepare ourselves, not so much for our own exaltation, our own blessedness, our own sanctification, but really that, but also maybe more importantly, that we, like Mary and John the Baptist, would be great instruments. Mary and John, the great heroes of Advent. Mary, the first to have announced to her the good news that the Savior was taking flesh here in our world. She understood that she had to be for herself. She had to get out of the way. She had to let the Spirit work in and through her, so that she would not be an obstacle. John the Baptist as well. They understood that they needed to let God's Spirit take control even of their lives. And so how do we do that? How are we faithful to John the Baptist's call this second Sunday of Advent to prepare the way of the Lord, make a straight path, one that doesn't provide any obstacles, any barriers to the Spirit passing through us and into the world. There was a young novice and she was preparing to enter the convent. And so she took the model of certainly Jesus and John and Mary, and she prayed. She went to a place of silence in church, and she prayed that the Lord might reveal to her. She said, Lord, show me the way that you most want me to lead this religious life, this journey of the Spirit that I'm embarking upon. And as she was in prayer, she heard a voice, and that voice directed her to go to a particular church. Obedient to that call, she went to that church. And as she was entering, she was told that there she would find the answer to her prayers. And as she was entering, she encountered a man who was clearly living on the streets. He was poor, he was disheveled, no shoes on his feet, rags on his body. But as was her custom, hoping to bring the man some hope, she greeted him and said, good day, sir, and I hope you have a good day. To her surprise, the man said, well, thank you for your well wishes, but I have to tell you, young lady, in all honesty, that I've never had a bad day. And she looked at him and said, well, how is that possible? How, as you stand before me in these rags, clearly hungry and disheveled, in need of much, how can you tell me that you've never had a bad day? He said, whether it rains or snows, when it rains and snows, I give thanks to God for watering the fields and making them fertile to produce the fruits and vegetables that we need. If I'm hungry, as I often am, I simply give thanks to God for the gift of life and for being alive. If someone rejects me, mistreats me, curses me, demeans or humiliates me, I give thanks to God that I can participate in the saving power of the cross. I accept that as a cross, knowing that Jesus did as well and called me to carry my cross. And I know that I can be an instrument of this person's salvation by forgiving them, by being merciful and understanding, by simply accepting that. And so I can tell you, young lady, with complete honesty, that I have become accustomed to will what God wills, as God wills it, and how God wills it. I want what God wants, and I trust his provident hand that everything that happens to me, good or bad, is somehow what is best for me because I have absolute confidence in God. And that's the secret, and that is the truth when I tell you that I've never had a bad day. She said, well, who are you? He said, I am a king. You are a king. Where is your kingdom? In my soul. And how did you achieve such a state of perfection and greatness? He said, I'm a king. And my kingdom is my soul, where the passions obey reason and reason obeys God. And how does one arrive at a kingdom like yours? He says, by practicing silence. I practice silence towards human beings, and I learn to converse always with God. And this is how I know that God is so good, and I accept everything from his provident hand. Mary is extolled because of her humility. Of her many virtues, certainly it is humility that could be her greatest. The Lord has looked with favor on his humble servant. And what is humility? Well, humility is what that young man revealed to the young novice entering the convent. Humility is essentially accepting. To be humble is to say, is to put aside my own will, my own wants, and to be accepting. To say that God is greater than I am, and that God is so good. How could I ever improve on his plans or do anything that would really add to or in some way be a substitute or lead me to any happiness? Humility is acceptance. And so Mary accepted the angel's message. Mary accepted the call and the obligation, really, to be the God-bearer, to bear in herself, despite all of her fears, indeed, doubts, and serious questions, including her own fiance from Joseph. Humility, the great virtue. Humility is Mary's strength. And why is it her strength? Because it counteracts our weakness. The weakness which came to us through the author of sin, the devil. It was his pride. It is his pride that caused him to be cast down. It was his pride that led to anger and envy and jealousy that caused him, out of jealousy and anger and envy, to lead us to sin. And how did the devil lead us to sin? He led us to sin through pride. Do what you want. Eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Take for yourself moral judgment. It's the exact opposite of humility. Humility is to accept everything from the provident hand of God. And we must embrace this humility, as Mary did, as John the Baptist did. You know, it is the archangel Michael who cast out the evil one from the Garden of Eden. The name Mikael means, it's really a question. It could be, who is like God? Like, who is like God? And we should ask ourselves every time we're tempted to pride, who is like God? Am I like God? We're created in the image and likeness of God. But God's goodness, God's omnipotence, God's knowledge, God's love is unsurpassed. Why would I not simply just want to receive it? And that is the great grace of humility. We celebrated early in November 1st, All Saints' Day. And St. Alphonsus Liguorius, a number have reminded us that there are many saints in heaven who were not martyrs. They did not give their blood. They did not sacrifice their own life for Christ and in faith for his kingdom. There are many saints in heaven who were not poor. There were many saints in heaven who were kings, like King Louis XIV. St. Catherine Drexel here in Philadelphia came from a very wealthy family. She had a great deal of wealth. There are many saints in heaven who weren't religious, who weren't priests and nuns, and brothers who were married because that was their state in life. There were many who didn't practice great states of asceticism and mortification, denying themselves so many things. Their bodily weaknesses, excuse them from it. But there is no saint in heaven who was not humble. There's no saint in heaven who was not humble, who did not accept and give to God. Another word for humility is giving to God the praise and glory that God deserves. That does not belong to any other creature, any human being. God cast out from heaven his own angels because of their pride. They fell through their pride. Do we think that we can enter the blessedness of heaven being pride for ourselves? No, it is humility. So look for signs. Look for the signs of humility and pride. Embrace humility. Embrace humility in your life. One of the ways that we know that we are being humble, practicing humility or not, is how much we complain. Complaining is a sign that we're stuck on our ego, that there's something that we want, and actually worse, we want people to be a certain way, and we want the world to be a certain way. When it's not, we complain, we complain, we complain. If you find yourself complaining a lot, that might mean you need to prepare the way of the Lord a little more. That might mean that you need a little more humility in your life. Remember, God punished the Israelites in the desert because of why? Not because they were breaking the commandments, they complained. They complained about the food. They didn't trust. They didn't trust, as the beggar on the steps of the church did, that everything was from the providence of God, even if they didn't fully grasp it, or even it caused them some suffering, so some discomfort. So how can we prepare ourselves the best? Well, let's be humble. Let's be open to the will of God. And let's especially understand that humility means acceptance. Even if it's something that we don't like, maybe even especially if it's something that we don't like. So the next irritation, the next time somebody gets on your nerves, the next time some loss happens in your family, the next time something you find yourself, your anger rising, your complaint, your fist is raising, prepare the way of the Lord. Make straight his paths. Practice humility. Practice silence towards creatures. Practice that openness and acceptance, knowing that not only will your grace, your peace, your salvation be achieved because you'll be open to God's Spirit, but you will be an instrument of that same Spirit, that same grace of God in the world. I'm going to repeat to you the words of Archbishop Nelson Perez. Never doubt the power of God's Spirit working in you, working through you, and working despite you. That's the best way to prepare for Advent. Be an instrument. Be open. Be humble. God will dwell in you. God will work through you. And there will be a blessedness that awaits you.